gentlemen, at this time, I'm going to call our meeting to order. Our first order of business this evening is approval of minutes, and we don't have any minutes for the board's review at this time. And we'll move to item 3, which is the Planning and Zoning Administrator's Weekly Report.
Mr. Chairman, just a few quick things. I did leave a number of handouts for the board members. I thought we would distribute those in advance rather than at the end of the meeting. Included were a couple of pieces of correspondence which come in regarding items that the board is dealing with, and also the packet for next week. I did mention a couple of weeks ago that we were headed for our day in court, so to speak, with Mid-City Paving. You may have noticed the site is cleaned up. We have a settlement agreement with the owner of that property to maintain the property according to the current site plan, and they have agreed to reimburse us for our legal fees in that endeavor. Also, I'm pleased to announce that I've hired a new planning and zoning administrator who will be joining us, during the week of between Christmas and New Year's, and her name is Nancy Larson. She is currently holding a similar position in the town of Bedford, and so I expect that she'll do a very good job here for us. And that's it.
Question on that Mid-City Paving, are they eliminating the landscaping section?
Yes, it's gone.
Okay.
All the materials are gone with a few minor exceptions that they've agreed to clean up, and that's part of the court order.
And they're not just waiting until next spring to start again?
They better not be.
Any other questions or comments for Walter? Just a second.
Just one thing, our last meeting with Milton kind of jogged my memory about something. We brought this up, I guess at least a year ago, about how we had neglected when we changed our regulations so that unbuildable areas weren't counted in the area of a piece of property. We neglected to do that for the elderly projects as well. And so just wanted to mention that to staff. It's something that can be done with just a few words inserted.
Well, maybe we should have some discussion on it. I'm not sure that oversight was, I'm not sure that was an oversight, but I think there was some discussion about it.
I thought it was, and I thought that a year ago we had mentioned that, but okay, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was intentional that unbuildable land would be counted.
We've had that discussion several times, and it's treated differently in different places within the zoning ordinance. For example, within planned residential developments, there's a subtraction of unbuildable land, wetlands, floodplains, steep slopes. That language does not occur in the elderly ordinance.
I know, but in ordinary residential it does. And we had, when we put that in,
for higher density,
the wetlands.
Only for high density, yeah.
No, for ordinary residential also. They can't.
Yeah, a lot size counts all the land in the lot, whether it's wet or whether it's sloped.
Well,
except for wetlands.
You have to have so many square feet of contiguous.
Well, yes, yeah.
The stuff outside that, it doesn't count.
That's part of the contiguous. It's part of the lot.
Okay, well, maybe we should have more discussion.
We should have some more discussion of it. I think maybe we can agenda that, Walter, in the new year here.
And that would require a zoning change.
Well, if we decide to change it, I think we should look at all the different sections and see how it's worded, and maybe we can find the rationale. I know we've had the discussion before, but I don't think it's a simple oversight. I think, yeah. Okay, anything else for Walter? If not, we'll take up the principal topic tonight, which is item number 4, which is a presentation by and a discussion with Rick Tainter of Tainter Associates regarding the first draft of conditional use permit regulations for the I-2 Industrial District. We all received a copy of this electronically at the end of the week last week, and I spent some time going over it on the weekend and met with Walter on Monday, and we had some discussion of it, and subsequently we had a telephone conversation with Rick about it. I think that this draft that we have is a very rough first cut. It includes some things that probably don't belong in the conditional use permit, but rather belong in a development agreement and/or a preliminary site plan, or are covered elsewhere in regulations and in our regulations existing, or by the RSAs of the state of New Hampshire. So there's sort of a mixture of things that came together here. We talked to Rick about that, and however, there's a couple of sections in here that really contain the meat of the conditional use permit rules, and that's in section 8 of this document. So I would propose that we focus our discussion tonight on giving Rick feedback on section 8, and meanwhile, Walter has proposed, I think, and maybe we've had some discussion with Rick about proceeding from here, that he and myself and Rick would work to clean up the front part of this and pull out those things that belong in the development agreement and put them separate, and those things that are part of the initial site plan, get those separated out from here and boil this down to the part that pertains to the development agreement, to the conditional use permit itself. Walter, I'm going to turn over to you and let you elaborate on that, because
Yeah,
I missed something here.
it seemed apparent to me as I went through that there was an overlap. Rick was preparing this as a standalone document, and we're looking at incorporating it into our subdivision and site plan regulations. So some of the boilerplate which Rick has included in several sections are already included within our subdivision site plan regulations. Also, it seemed as if there were some provisions, as the chairman mentioned, were more appropriate included in the development agreement itself, which consummated the conditional use permit process. So, and not having had a chance to really go through and review all of those matters with Rick ahead of time, we'd like the opportunity to do that, boil this document down to fewer, more substantive pages on the issue of the conditional use permit process, and then bring everything back to the board in a cleaner format, eliminating some of the duplication that exists.
That said, I think we can have some meaningful discussions on section 8
In the appendix.
and the associated appendices, yeah.
Can I just bring up something about the development agreement? That sounds like something that we should get some real legal looking at, especially not just, hey, they've agreed to this, but in getting it to really work for us, and so that it doesn't become something that, okay, we said that, but no, we interpret it differently later on, and it goes to court, and it drags on for years, during which time they ignore it, and the court case is just a matter of the cost of doing business, okay, and then the years pass, and people who were involved with it retired and gone to Florida, and soon it becomes just a quaint historical artifact.
Absolutely. Our legal counsel has encouraged the use of development agreements in general. Our ordinance regarding this matter requires a development agreement. One reason our legal counsel encourages it is because it's a separately enforceable document outside of the approval. So definitely that will be included and
Okay,
on a list.
But enforcing it is another question. It's a separate document outside it, but I don't know.
Separately enforceable, yeah.
Yeah, but enforcing it is the question. How do we enforce it without it becoming this protracted court case type of thing? And I don't know, maybe we should get some other legal opinion on it as well, some experts in that particular field.
We will, and also I think Rick had distributed the first time that we met on the subject a copy of an agreement that he's worked with. We also have some other language we've received from our attorneys, but certainly we can get the assistance we need.
And Rick, was that, when you've worked with it, has it been in New Hampshire?
No, it was the Massachusetts case.
Because the law could be quite different. I know there are a number of things that are very different in New Hampshire. just general outlook towards things. So good to get a New Hampshire lawyer.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
Should we also just talk briefly about timetable? Do you want to, because we also, when you and Walter and I discussed this, we were also talking about not just an undefined future date, but we were talking about a January 23rd date, I think, is our next comeback to this. Was that what we're talking about? And I think that's, we're sort of aiming for a time certain.
Yeah,
to get the
looking
next
at the
draft.
calendar, that was the first time we had clear agendas on both
sides.
Rick's part and our part. What I would hope, Rick, is that we could get a draft of this document a week before that to the board, so they have a full week to review it, of the cleaned up version of this document.
Right. And we are scheduled to meet, I think, ourselves within the next week or so.
That's right.
Yep,
That's
okay.
correct.
Okay. I do apologize for getting this to you. Not enough advance warning. I definitely might.
Okay, it's a little tough to start off cold, but anyway, Rick, I'm going to, at this point, then turn over to you and let you lead us through this and into the areas especially where it needs some elaboration. If we're going to stay with Section 8,
Yeah.
I think people will probably want to offer you comments on different sections, and but you can sort of take the lead on this rather than...
Yeah, based on my past, on the past discussion we had October 31st, it seems that the prime concerns that were raised in terms of all these items had to do with the fiscal impact analysis and the transportation impacts. Those seem to be the key issues. I think you had more comfort that some of the other things, the environmental impacts and so forth, could be adequately addressed, and the service impacts, obviously looking at municipal services, is an issue, but that's somewhat an indirect impact. But the way this is organized is that, as you can see, it has an existing conditions report, which basically is describing the site as it is now, a proposed development report, which describes the proposed development, gives the basic information, and then a series of 5 reports that talk about the various impacts that might be created by the development and how the development could mitigate or accommodate those impacts. The first one dealing with public services, public facilities and services, then traffic impacts and transportation demand management, and then the fiscal and community impacts and environmental impacts. So I think it'll probably be pretty easy to go through the first 2. I think we'll once we get to the service improvements report, we might have a little bit more discussion. But basically, the existing conditions report is what it is. It's a description of the existing site, and I don't know whether there's anything that popped out to any of you. It's a very simple section. Is there anything here that you would like more information on as you're looking at the sort of a general description of the existing site? I think this site has probably been described many times over the years with many proposals. It's probably nothing that you don't really know about at this point, but I don't know if you had a chance to think about this section, but it's just descriptive.
Well, one thing that jumped out at me, Rick, was in 8.1b, it talked about types of development, and I think that this document is going to focus on the outlet mall type of outlet village shops kind of development. So that item B, having to do with industrial and residential, is really not applicable here, I think.
As a general question, is this, we're drafting this specifically for this particular provision without a thought of it being applied to future other types of development, conditional use permits? Is that...
Well, Walter and I seem to have a differing opinion on that. My thought was that it should be focused on the outlet village shops, period. Now, I don't know how the rest of the board feels about this. Walter was trying to broaden it to include those kind of developments that are permitted now in the I-1 industrial district. They weren't permitted initially. But my concern was that we should have a document that focused on the outlet village shops itself, kind of development, and not bring all these other thoughts into it, because I'm sure we're going to miss something. And
I certainly agree with that, because this is being paid for by an applicant.
yeah,
And I'm sure he would be quite distressed if we were not aiming it for this one particular zoned parcel, his parcel. And,
At present, we have two different sets of conditional use permit criteria within the ordinance,
Right.
each of which allows the board to, or requires the board to adopt rules and regulations regarding how they're implemented. Certainly, the instant case here is for conditional use permits, permitted uses within, excuse me, the I-2 zone. Just a point of clarification, currently, the applicant is not paying for this piece of work. This is, the board is paying for this piece of work. And that's based on the applicant's previous representation that if this is a single document that's going to apply across the board, then they're not the only reason for this work being done. If we pursue the other route, then they are the reason for this work being done. It's possible farther down the line to add an addendum, I suppose, to this core piece of work to apply to conditional use permits within the I-1 zone. And just from a pure mechanics point of view, the chairman and I have had some discussions as to how does it work out best? Do we have to maintain these two parallel sets of regulations, or is there a more efficient way to do that? Strictly speaking, for the I-2 conditional use permit application, there is no industrial or residential component allowed. So the previous statements are true, that they should be removed from section 8.1b.
but let's go back to answer the basic question. I think we do want to focus this document on the outlet mall from Rick's point of view.
That's why we're here
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
And actually, there's another related question to that for this particular development. I'm not clear myself as to whether, I know there's a larger parcel and that there are some other uses that might take place within the larger tract of land. Do those, without having seen the plan and how it works, how this all works out, do those pieces at all get addressed by, say, the access road and so forth? You know, as we're permitting the outlet village shops, we're talking about an access road that goes in there. If that access road is also eventually going to need to serve other uses on sort of out parcels or adjacent parcels that might be under the same control, would they be subject to the same conditional use permit?
In all probability, there are several parcels involved, each of which has a set of underlying uses that are permitted by right. They will be served by, at present at least, it's thought that they will be served by the same access road. But the discussion has been that the development of several of those out parcels would not be, could happen independently and not be part of the conditional use permit.
But that's an interesting problem, because I think that when we talk about things like the traffic assessment and all of that, we want to include the entire site.
Yes, you definitely have the ability to do that.
And so
regardless.
we
Yeah.
want to go a little beyond maybe just strictly the outlet mall. If there's going to be a hotel there, I don't know if they're still thinking that, but at one time somebody mentioned a hotel. If that's going to be there, that's got to be part of the equation as far as traffic and the whole social impact and everything.
And that is it's really standard practice to include certain types of development, build out of a certain area, and also even uses that are proposed in some stage of the proposal process off-site. So you can incorporate large uses off-site in terms of your traffic analysis too. So that's the standard way that it's done.
Yeah.
Would that, would that be one study, or would you split it into two?
No, it would be one
Because-
study.
One study.
One study?
What you do is you essentially say, here are your existing conditions. Here's what conditions will be at a certain point of time in the future if nothing happens, if this development that you're permitting doesn't happen. And here are the conditions that happen at that same point in the future. given a variety of things, the uses that you have, that you're proposing, the uses that you're proposing, maybe you or somebody else is proposing adjacent to there, and then some surrounding uses that are well known. So if you know, for example, that there is another 500,000 square foot shopping center just down the road, that would have to be included in the traffic analysis too.
But the thing that the hotel and the restaurants might never be built.
True.
So I don't know how much that would affect the actual numbers. If you add it into one study and nothing ever happens, it could be a little bit inflated.
Well, it could be, but what you want to be careful about is you want to make sure that you include in your analysis kind of the maximum capacity that you need to have, that road needs to be designed for. And so if you're designing an access road that's going to serve some use there, whether it ultimately turns out to be another shopping center or a hotel or an office building or something else, there's something that's likely to happen there. And so that what your best guess or best knowledge of what that's going to be is what you incorporate in there.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, it seems to me this is under what's existing conditions, and I don't see all we're simply saying is what's there now, and we just cover what's there, and it could be anything. I don't really see why we're getting upset about the word industrial or residential in what we call existing conditions. We know the development is going to be for an outlet mall. All we're stating is what's there now, and I don't see we could put anything you like there. It's important. It's stated what is there now, and if there was a small industry, guy sharpening tools or something, it should be stated. I don't see the problem you have with having industry in there, to be honest, because it's only covering.
You're right, I misread it. You're right, I did misread it. I was thinking of the type of development that was coming, not what's already there.
Then I'd support you 100%.
And I misread it, and you are correct. And it should be, it can stay there, because if there is any industrial going on that property, we should know about it. That's right, and you're correct. I'm in error. Okay. Yes,
Shouldn't this also be including the abutting properties in their definition of what's there, so that we don't think it's just a piece of land all by itself in an island? I mean,
it does say for the project and for adjoining areas. It doesn't say how far out you have to go, but certainly the immediately abutting residential area ought to be part of this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
right,
yeah.
okay.
You're right. I misread it. Yeah.
Anything else on the existing, that should have been the easy one.
That should have been the easy one.
Gives you a feel what the rest of the night's going to be like.
Once you read it to us, it was easy.
Okay, so the proposed development report, and actually, I did catch this, Nelson, in the proposed development report under 822, there were other uses that were listed there. I specifically tied it down to the outlet village shops, building and uses. But this is a description of what is being proposed here, comparing existing conditions to what's allowed in the zoning ordinance and what is being proposed.
Yeah.
And so it's the first few bullet points are basically looking at breakdown of land area, how much is wetland, how much is upland, how much, what are the buildings going to be like, how much gross floor area is there, parking area, any structured parking, impervious area, gross area of parking areas, and then a breakdown of building coverage, open space, landscaped area outside the parking areas, and impervious surface. That's just kind of all just data.
Yeah.
And then it goes on to information on existing stormwater drainage facilities, existing proposed water service facilities, existing proposed sewer services, and underground utilities. And I think that as we talked about this in our phone conversation, we just said the numerical cross-references were wrong because I had added a section in after I had drafted this. But I think we talked about even deleting the cross-references and just saying that exist stormwater drainage facilities within public right-of-ways, et cetera, and just stopping it because we're actually going to delete those previous sections because they are no longer going to be relevant. So. So those get knocked out. Anything from as specified on in those four sections. And then solid waste disposal facilities, what are the lot divisions that are proposed, information on the public water supply and actions relating to its resource protection, and again, delete the words as specified of these rules and regulations, and information on sanitary waste disposal, and et cetera, same thing here, delete the words as specified. So that's an outline of the project. This is kind of just the raw description of what the project is.
I just had one. When you were talking about total gross floor area, is that the completed project, or is that because you were talking about phasing it in before?
Good point. Probably we should talk about phasing at this point, too.
Because the figures would be different, and I think you were talking about 2 years, possibly a difference for finishing it. So
to add it to this, generally, probably in the introductory paragraphs, should be talking about any phases, any intermediate phases. That would be a bullet that would
Be a bullet of its own.
It'd probably be a bullet before final project conditions.
Yeah.
Okay? Anything else on that? Yes.
8.2.2 and 8.2.3 talks about outlet village shops, buildings / uses. And, well, yeah, it talks about the size and the floor area, but not what it's going to be used for. And this has been represented to us as being some sort of a high-end development. And actually, if it's not, the value of the development probably would not be as great, and the tax revenues from it would not be as great. So we should have something that tells us what kind of things are going to be developed there, and make sure it's not Joe's Head Shop or.
Well, you're talking about the types of retail use, I think.
Yes, which has been represented continually with words like high-end and I'd like to see somehow how we can take these representations and make them meaningful. I ain't saying it's going to be easy.
Well, that may be, I guess you can categorize it in certain ways. I'm not sure that they can tell you all the tenants they're going to have in this place in advance.
Mr. Chairman, what this report is surely, this particular phase of the report, or proposed development report, is telling us what the uses are going to be. And therefore, all the surely that has to be is there has to be some, which I think really is what John's getting at, is some scope within this for the planning board and others to say that this particular use is not commensurate with what the whole the thing is going to be, the outlet mall concept, and therefore that there has to be the planning board has to have some right of veto over what of any particular use being developed on the site. Surely, isn't that what, John, you're looking for?
Well, I don't know about putting a veto in, because what will wind up, I would rather see something in the regulations themselves, because if it becomes a matter of veto, then we get faced with later on, gee, we can't get any people in our stores here, and the revenue is going to plummet unless you allow something in. At least you'll get some money. Otherwise, the tax value will be going down, and
Well, the taxes stay there whether it's occupied or not. Okay, so
well, it's,
well, they do.
You know, the value of the land. If you have a piece of land and nobody's willing to, piece of land with buildings on it, and nobody's willing to come into these buildings, the value of that land, I think, diminishes.
Well,
Not immediately, but after a while, and I hope we're taking a long-term view of this.
I think it's kind of difficult really to put anything in there, and then it's unenforceable. You know, how can you,
at this stage, we're trying to get our arms around how big this whole thing is going to be, how much of an impact it's going to have on the community, and what's in the individual stores, I think, is something that can be discussed elsewhere in the final plan or something. If it just doesn't,
Okay,
it seems like,
it could be put somewhere, but
and I'm not sure how to do what you're suggesting.
neither am I. But, yeah, maybe we can go into the final plan, but I don't see that we'll be in a better position then to.
I think that a place where that logically fits, and not that I know how to do it, but a place where it logically fits is in the fiscal impact analysis, because that's where you're looking at essentially your risk for having a low-end use come in to replace a high-end use, and that's what you're concerned about. So I think that, you know, when we get to that section, again, I don't know how to do it, but I know an issue, a similar type of question has come up, not the same question, but a question about kind of like a risk of over-relying on retail, and what happens if a significant portion of our retail base declines, and, you know, communities are looking at that and being concerned about that. So I would hold that thought, but maybe we'll come back, maybe we'll find a good place to put it in the fiscal section.
It does sound logically it should go more into the fiscal impact.
If we think about this as more physical description, and then
Okay,
to a large extent.
in that case, we probably should remove the /uses from the description of those sections, because.
Yeah, I guess what I was trying to get at there was, you might have buildings, and that oftentimes these outlet retail shops have like a food court. And that's not a retail use, it's like a separate use, and you'd want to know how much of the building was devoted to a food.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were looking for
So
there.
it's actually part of the outlet village mall, but it's not a retail store, so it does make sense. Maybe I could be a little bit clearer about that.
Do we just require that to be addressed in the required narrative in terms of a statement of purpose or intent in the applicant's overall development proposal? And then that could be carried into the development agreement as an overriding purpose statement, if you will.
Oh, you mean getting back to the original question about the high-end uses versus the low-end
Yeah,
uses?
just the general characterization of
Yeah.
the.
It does get
types
back
of
to that issue of enforcement, though. Even if you have it in a development agreement, then it becomes,
Very much so.
it's not any easier to enforce. So I think that I will look at seeing how we might characterize that, and maybe I can even talk with the proponents, consultants about that to see if they have any ideas. Because I'm sure, it's in their interest, too, to have the kind of certainty that you're looking for. This is descriptive. I guess we can move on.
Yeah.
Okay, service improvements report. And actually, before we get into this, and when you look at these reports, did they seem like they were in a logical order to you? We could look at ordering them if there's a different way. But this is, the service improvements, sort of gets into some other things relating to improvements to the traffic system and so forth. It's kind of
It seemed to
arbitrary.
me you had to do the traffic assessment before you could do the service
Okay,
improvements.
that's what
Okay.
Okay.
That's, since you pointed out,
Okay.
that did strike me as being out of order, because first of all, you want to know, how much, where are the traffic problems? So you do the traffic analysis, and then you talk about the improvements necessary to mitigate those.
Okay. So I will look at that. Maybe perhaps traffic assessment should come as number 3, and perhaps environmental should be number 4, and then service would be number 5, and then fiscal is number 6. It seems.
Well, does this transportation
Oh,
demand?
I'm sorry, I skipped that. Yeah.
thing-
That's really part of the same thing.
That's really part of the traffic.
Yeah.
That goes with the traffic.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take them in the order we have them right now, and then
Okay.
we can fix it later.
And the service improvements, do you think you're including here, should that be all kinds of services, or more restrictive, like, okay, services that will be necessary from the police department, fire department, and so on? Should that be in here if we're calling
Yes.
it service improvements?
That should be in there also, yeah. So if that's, public safety is not here, so,
Maybe this also follows the fiscal impact then.
well, I think actually you could go either way, because if you actually describe a commitment to services, then that commitment goes into the fiscal impact analysis.
Yeah,
You know,
okay.
in other words,
Yeah.
if they're already committed to mitigating an expense, then you don't have to count that expense in the fiscal impact analysis. So, but it also
Gotta
goes.
work together.
It also, these improvements, these commitments feed right into the development agreement.
Yeah.
But public safety is an issue that we should add to this.
Well, I was looking at the trains piece of the transportation part, and there's that whole, we're going to develop high-speed commuter rails someday when God drops $1 bazillion on us. But it did occur to me that I've yet to see a traffic impact study that doesn't say everything will be hunky-dory. And my assumption is that it's probably not going to be as hunky-dory as it's made out to be, and that if there were, in fact, trains coming up here, that might be a way of mitigating some of the issues of traffic. And I don't know how we could ask that and how they would fund it, because obviously we certainly can't expect them to fund high-speed commuter rail. But maybe deals could be worked out, or questions could be asked, or, you know.
I don't see how we can expect them to do anything about that.
Well, we
And
would
the fact
expect
that
road
they're-
improvements if they were, you know, and we probably will expect road improvements.
Right.
And, you know, but if we're talking about the kind of volumes we're being told might happen because they've happened elsewhere, then certainly even road improvements are probably not going to make anybody happy. And that this might be a way, you know, trains might be a way of helping if there were a shuttle or something from the train station.
Yeah, but until somebody
Steps up
builds
to build
those
trains.
trains,
But we do have, the railroad actually exists. It's not like they have to put in tracks, you know. They just have to goose whoever's in charge of putting the trains on the rails.
I don't know about just.
I think one thing to think about here is your time horizon. And, well, that's kind of a very laudable long-term goal. Probably if you're looking at a 10-year horizon, you know, for your planning at this point. We haven't talked about what that horizon is, but that's probably not going to happen in the 10-year horizon. So, you know, we want to make sure we focus the efforts on.
Sorry, I didn't think it's going to happen in a 25-year horizon either, but still.
It will have the
I said I didn't know what your horizon.
It'll have the kind of a horizon that the circumferential highway had,
Yeah.
That's
or
what I
has
was.
still.
So I guess that's what I'm saying. We want to make sure that any effort that we ask them to do is an effort that's going to bear fruit in some sort. And I think we could probably be arguing long-term about the train. It's a much larger problem than this.
Yeah, it's a much larger problem than this, and I don't think they're counting on the train to provide access for their employees or their customers. I think it's going to be automobile, bus, truck, and we've got to look at that aspect of it. Yeah.
Any other questions or
So
comments
I
on this?
didn't have anything else on that section.
It was easy. I think we could jump now to an appendix, couldn't we, for
Well,
traffic?
for traffic assessment, yes, we reference Appendix D in this case.
I think this is kind of a partial, an excerpt of something else. I'm not sure that it begins with paragraph C, so I think I probably deleted
Yeah.
some earlier paragraphs, but I guess there's part of this is process. Part of it is just looking at a scoping session, and maybe that could be pulled out and go into your normal, this might be a section that goes in, that is already covered by your normal process, do you think?
No, I don't think it is. It's got to be somewhere in this, I think it's got to be somewhere in this document.
I mean,
We had
for-
highlighted it as something we wanted to do. We wanted to have a sit-down, upfront meeting regarding traffic with
Okay.
these people to be sure, I think, that they covered those intersections and those issues that the board saw. In there, they did do a preliminary, a couple of years ago, they did do a traffic analysis when they first came to us to talk about this project. And at that time, the board felt there were some things that hadn't been included that they would like to see. So that's why I suggested that this should come up front somewhere where we could have that talk and conversation, so the board got those issues addressed in the traffic analysis that was done.
Particularly, as Mr. Chairman, with the considerable growth of the Fidelity business in the immediate vicinity. I think that what was presented 2 years ago is sadly irrelevant.
Well, it is irrelevant, there's no question about that, and we're going to,
It's got to be, you're absolutely right. It's
we've got to
be.
look at it again.
Absolutely.
And
Something else that we might consider is we're going to be getting all this information. And, yeah, it's nice to have it, and we can do a fair amount with it. But to some degree, maybe we should also look at a little more of what we're going to do with it and make sure that we're gathering the right information for what we want to do. That could be more information or less information. We don't want to have traffic studies for no reason unless we're going to use the information.
I'd 100% agree with you on that, and I think that brings up one other thing that we talked about in that Fay, Spofford, Thorndike, who are traffic consultants working with Rick, ought to get involved in this Appendix D and get their 2 cents worth in as to the things that they think should be done. So this meeting, this scoping meeting certainly should include them, and they should also have this up front and become involved with setting this criteria that's in here.
Yes.
Okay. And,
Oh, Pete, yeah.
While you're on that, I think one of the things we also need to take a look at, and I don't know how we're going to trigger that, but is the regional impact. That we need some input and expertise from probably National Regional Planning Commission, and have a lot of insight in the general area, but I think we need to focus it, not merely focus it for our impacts, but and how we want to handle that, but try to get that, make sure we're not creating a regional problem here. And do that right up front, we can solve the problem.
Well, there are a couple of things, I guess, a couple of questions that we can either decide now or wait until this scoping meeting to discuss, but one of them is what the proper time horizon is. You know, I think at an earlier meeting we had talked, or somebody had suggested maybe 10 years, and maybe somebody else had said an even higher number, but there was a question about what you wanted to see as your time horizon for the impacts. And obviously that has some relationship to the phasing of the centers. You know, if they're going to be coming, if the second phase isn't going to be coming along for a couple of years later, then their time horizon should be further
the
out.
second phase may never come along.
Right.
Well, we've got a plan on it, though. We've got a plan
Oh,
for
we
it.
have
So
to
it's got
plan
to be
for it.
included in there.
You plan for it if it comes.
Okay.
But with the realization that it may never come.
Well,
There's no way we can twist their arms and say, you
no,
must build
but we
this.
want the infrastructure to be able to support it.
Right,
So,
absolutely.
so that's why we need to look at it now.
Gordon just pointed out that the DOT requires 10 years, a 10-year
Okay.
horizon, so that's
That
there.
was my recollection, that they required 10 years. I see it says 5 in here.
Yeah.
But we had talked about that earlier. I thought maybe 10 was,
And I guess the other question is the question that you raised about it's the regional impact, but
Read something.
you know, how far out are we looking at traffic impact? And maybe we can't say at this point. Maybe that's something that gets said in the scoping meeting.
What do you mean by
How far out geographically? How far away from the site do we start looking at traffic, do we stop looking at traffic impacts? Where are the key intersections?
Okay, I think your traffic people can probably help us there. These things become less and less important the further away you go. So I think they must have some rules of thumb on that. I don't know if I could answer
It would
that
depend on their modeling, trip modeling.
Yeah.
They use a gravity model to assign
Yeah.
people to routes coming into the site.
Yeah.
And that would be
And at some
impact.
point, it just disappears into the noise. Yeah.
That's true, but the state is still contemplating a beltway around Nashua, which is now going to terminate on US Route 3. Before it was a throughway, if you would, that would have connected to the turnpike.
It's reduced to a bridge. I mean,
Well, maybe it's reduced to a bridge, but it still there's still an impact that we have to possibly explore, and that maybe possibly is not the right term, but nevertheless, the thought process is there. That's going to become another regional draw, if you will, and we can probably model that, I would think, or the state could do that, because it's going to hit their transportation system.
Well, that's one of the infrastructure items that we would want to make sure was incorporated. Yep.
sure, we got New Hampshire DOT involved in this right off the bat. Yeah.
And that would be on page, I don't know if your pagination is working the same as mine did, but on page 30, future conditions without development, item C, identification of planned roadway improvements in the vicinity of the proposed development.
Yeah.
So we could say including.
Yeah.
Okay.
One other one that I know of that's in the long-range planning of the state is the widening to 6 lanes, 3 in each direction of the Effie Everett Turnpike between Nashua and Bedford. That's it's in the 10-year
10-year
plan,
plan.
15 years out or something.
So isn't the airport link road also in the
The
same?
airport, yes, the airport
Access
road
road.
is another one. It's in the long-range plan. Pardon? Yeah, that's much
thought it
closer.
was. I thought
That's
it
much
was.
closer to
Yes, I thought
reality.
that
Yeah,
was the first piece that was coming in.
yeah.
There are some future things that come, not some that don't. Would it be proper to look at this point, how the methodologies in determining various traffic things? We all know that if we just go to a developer, well, the source of traffic for a thing like this, we know what that will be, and they'll show you 3 places that they've selected. And of course, they're going to select ones that produce the result that they like. And that goes not only for traffic, but all sorts of statistics that they will gather. They will, well, it's our experience that this is the most important day to do it on, and this is the most important hour to do it on. And they'll take the measurements on a certain day, which might be representative or might not be. I don't know how to approach that. In smaller developments, to do a decent statistical analysis of this type, a valid one, becomes very expensive. But it might be feasible for a project of this size.
What are you saying would be different from a normal one, or what is very expensive?
To gather the statistics, you have to do more than just well, we'll pick one day that we like to
Oh, I
pick
see.
and measure it then, and we'll pick the time of the day that we think is the best, and
Yeah, I think, I mean,
instead of having,
Yeah.
you know, here's a measurement today and this month, and there's a measurement around Christmas, or maybe we've got ways of estimating the Christmas, but really doing more of a statistical job. A small project, they can't afford to do that.
no, you're right, and I think there are methods for doing that. There are ratios of by month, average daily traffic per month, and by week, and so forth, and that is based on a lot of historical data that's available. So we can talk about that in more detail later, but I think what the kind of common practice or accepted practice is to do your counts specific to your site and then adjust them to the peak day, the peak hour, et cetera, and then do your analysis based at the peak 2 hours on Saturday in the middle of the day because it's a shopping center, or the peak hours in the afternoon rush hour and so forth, and that you can take your counts given the month that you take them in and adjust them to an annual average in a high rate.
Is this historical information, is this the information provided by the applicant, or are there some other standards?
There's historical state information from historical state traffic count recorders all over the state. And so there are some specific to this area. I don't know where they are, but I'm sure Gordon does.
But I think what Mr. Segedy is looking for is perhaps not the application of that historical data, but this is described to us as being a very unique use.
I got you.
And
Okay.
I think where Mr. Segedy is going is, can we test the hypothesis of those historical figures against empirical data
From other similar centers.
provided by the applicant from other sites that they
Got it.
operate that are similar?
Well, I'm a little worried about if it's just information that's cherry-picked by the applicant. That I was looking for, is there something, an objective standard that is independent of this applicant from, I don't know,
Well,
maybe some AASHTO information,
Yeah, there
but
is
a lot
a-
of other
yeah.
things as well.
The trip generation handbook keeps getting updated, and as new uses come, like a lifestyle center, then that gets added. I don't know how many counts there are in the current edition for this type of
I'm not
use.
sure. There are,
Yeah.
I don't know what specific ITE, I'm not the traffic guy. I'm not sure what specific ITE data there is on outlet shops, but we typically use ITE data for trip generation bolstered by empirical data that may be collected from, specifically from similar sites. And, when we collect data, I can't speak for everybody in the trade, but we collect data on, for peak hour, because that's what you design for. And in the case of retail developments, it's peak PM hour and Saturday midday peak hour. Those are the relevant timeframes. And so that's what you design to. So all of the data is collected for multiple days. We do seasonal adjustments, in case of, depending on when the data is collected, to get to average and peak flows. So, that's the standard industry methodology. I don't know, you could go out and collect data for years and have, a research paper, but that's not what the industry does. I don't know what else you can do besides follow the IT standards.
Maybe that's where Faye Spofford can help us. I think we should have that discussion with them. Yeah.
Because it was just I was wondering, it's been coming up lately, it's in the standards, but sometimes it isn't explained that well, whether you're in a school season or a summer season, where you have the school buses, cars going to and from. And it's a question, when we get some of the data before us, the abutters or people concerned are wondering, was this related to a school season or a non-school season, if it's figured in?
And for, when we updated counts for this development because when we had previously prepared an analysis, it was a couple of years ago. So, and there have been things that have happened in the corridor. The good thing is that the population at Fidelity when we did the counts was essentially, I don't know whether it was exactly the same, but it was more than what it was when we previously did the counts, so it more closely approximates the conditions out there today. The other thing was that we were careful to do that before school let out. I think we did them in June, early June kind of thing. Seems like a long time ago now, but likewise, you wouldn't want to take traffic counts today because it's skewed in the other direction. I mean, you can do a statistical analysis to arrive at holiday peaking, but you have to make a judgment with the regulatory community as to what weight you assign that sort of queuing factor to, because it's like designing to a 25-year storm or a 50-year storm or a 100-year storm. You've got to pick one.
I guess all I was trying to say is maybe if a study was taken in July, and then you could use the tables to say this is what we get in July, but this is how it would factor if we looked at it in May because of the school season, and that would explain a lot to the people, not just saying, well, we took a study in July and these are the numbers.
One thing I would add is, and if I pick up on your comment that you took a study in June, well, in that case, you didn't factor in the massive growth on 40 Continental Boulevard, which Fidelity have now taken over. And if you...
I think they've been in there for more than a year.
No. Sorry. No. You look at that car park today, and I walk the dog around there every day. So I know when they took it over, they started moving in February, and when they started digging the fibre optic cable. But if you go and look at that parking lot today, you're pressed to find, in sort of 4:30, you're pressed to find somewhere to park a car to walk a dog. So, you're really going to, if you throw June up at me, I'll throw it back at you and say, go and do it again. Because, that area is, with Fidelity bailing out at 5 o'clock, it really is something to behold.
Well, this is the kind of thing that would actually come up in the scoping session.
This is what I'm saying. We've got to get we've really got to get the real up-to-date information.
Right, but we don't actually need to write it in the regulations.
No. But what I'm simply saying to the applicant, for his own information,
right.
Go and count 14 continents.
It's interesting, with computers and so forth, it probably wouldn't take a lot to do every possible scenario over a whole year, but there's more data than you could read, so.
Oh, sure.
You have to balance this out.
You did use it.
Okay. On the last page is we sort of are getting into this now, the description of future conditions with development. So looking at using trip generation unless otherwise directed by the planning board, and this is the question that's being asked about, is there a use that is like this use, and do we have that data? One of the issues that came up, and I want to make sure that we have the wording to your liking. There was a lot of discussion at the previous meeting that I was at about tolls and interchanges and so forth. And I don't know whether you want to get into detail at this point or whether you want to flag some specific wording. I know there has been some discussion about this. I don't know if this is the right place to put it in or not.
I don't know what you meant, Rick. The tolls are there now.
I think there was an issue about, removing toll booths versus, there was a lot of discussion about how you might address traffic congestion by dealing with toll booths differently.
Yeah.
Maybe that's too premature at this point.
Yeah, I don't know what question to ask.
Okay.
The tolls are there.
Yeah.
And I don't see them going away right away.
Okay.
If they did go away, that would be another study, but I'm not sure that it's really part of this,
Well, I think we want to include the area of the toll booths in the study area, of course.
Well, the toll booth's a part of the study, yeah. That exit is a main feeder exit into the,
Is there another location in town where this could apply?
what?
This zoning,
Across the street.
this particular zoning? I'm just wondering how, if I can write it as specific as that. So there's one place across the street where this zoning district could apply?
Yes, it
Where
applies to
Fidelity
all of
currently
I-2.
is, yeah.
Where Fidelity, current Fidelity property.
So we could get specific about locational things in these regulations,
Yes, I think
if we
so.
wanted to.
I think so.
It's specific to exit 10.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, but
What-
the
what-
impact's going to go back down all the way to 7, the people that are going to bail off to try and avoid tolls, or 8, and cut through Tinker Road or something like that. I
Don't
mean,
define it as
No, I
10.
mean, the proximate parcels to
Right.
which
Right,
this-
or
Oh,
right
I
at
see what
exit
you
10.
mean.
Yeah, he was
But I
talking
mean, people
about,
are going to bail off at 11. So north
could.
coming, traffic from the north coming south is going to bail off at 11, just as likely as 10. If they see 10's getting congested and backed up, they'll come off at 11.
Could be.
it's a possibility,
I'll put
it's
money
part
on
of the
it.
study.
I'll put
Yeah.
money on
It
it.
should be part of the study, should be part of the look. It's a diversion, a possible diversion in the case of high traffic.
It's going to be, yeah.
Okay. Okay. I think we can, if we're finished here, are we finished with this appendix?
Let's see if we've got everything. There was something else I wanted to, something else I had in mind, but I can't remember it.
You'll get another shot at it.
Okay, all right. We definitely want to bring Faves, Spofford, Thorndike into this and make sure we get their thinking on this and the methodology to be used. Oh, I think one of the things, it does talk about seasonal adjustments and peaks. And we've got to look at this peaking situation that seems to occur with this type of development, the Black Friday scenarios.
And as we had discussed, it may be appropriate to move section 10.3 into the traffic analysis, traffic management section.
Section 10.3.
regarding a
Oh, yes, traffic management plan.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So let's flip back then to bottom of page 12, top of page 13. My draft, 8.5. This is, again, we were talking about combining this into the traffic impact assessment report about looking at ways to manage traffic other than through physical improvements.
Yeah.
Okay. 8.6, fiscal and community
8.6.
impact report.
Okay. Yeah, that's appendix C, right?
This actually may be short enough to move into the body.
On 8.6, before we leave that on page 13, that 8.6.5, I think, is not,
Yes, great.
yeah. Now, there were some things in our original outline that we thought of with regard to the fiscal impact that got lumped together. Again, we wanted to have a planning board meeting up front on this to talk about, to get the planning board concerns on the table,
Okay.
just like we did for the traffic. And that's not included here. What?
one other thing that isn't in here, and I guess would go in, was Walter at our last meeting on this mentioned that he's going to need more staff as well. We don't want to leave that out. I guess that goes into 8.6.2.
This,
Or, you know, Appendix C, Item 2 also.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think it'll be easier to combine those two together.
Yeah. Let me see, so we got the, now, again, there was a question of the impact horizon here. And we had thought 10 years in this case too. It's not, it's sort of silent on it right now, just for how long of a period you're gonna project out.
10 years is, I mean, obviously, the further out you go, the more speculative it is.
It is, yeah.
But I think that 10 years is reasonable because many of the impacts are kind of cumulative. They grow over time, and you get to a point where, for example, the first couple of years when it's in development, there's one type of impact, and then right after it's initially completely occupied, you've got maximum benefit impact, and then there's an incremental growth in costs and growth in revenues. And so you probably want to look at it sort of a 10-year looks is reasonable. I think I don't recall what we actually used when we did the malls in Berlin, Massachusetts, but I think we worked on a completion in 2 to 5 and 6 to 10. We had kind of 3 different scenarios.
And there was one other thing that the planning board had talked about in our initial discussions that didn't quite make it in here, at least I couldn't find it, was that it was the the effects on surrounding property values, especially residential properties or any properties in the surrounding. What would be the effect of this on them? And that's been a question. So that should be answered probably in this section.
Do you have
That
any?
would include industrial,
Yes? Yes, it would, yeah.
who might be dissuaded if the traffic in the area makes it their site inaccessible.
Might.
Again, that type of thing is the question that you raised about whether a particular land use, a non-residential land use would be negatively impacted is, and that's going to be hard to speculate, I think, and that's you could probably argue it different ways. So we want to make sure that we can talk about that during the scoping session, but I think we want to make sure that that we don't ask for essentially a guess that different sides can argue about, and they'll be arguing about that guess rather than the more secure portions of the fiscal impact study.
A lot of this is guess anyway.
Right, but some of it is, yeah.
Guessier than
Yeah,
others.
yeah.
But surely, taking your point, surely it would not, Mr. Chairman, if I may, it doesn't preclude you looking at similar operations like this and see what has happened in the local community.
Sure.
Has industry disappeared? Have people sold their houses because they can't stand the noise, etc., etc., etc.? I mean, I'm not asking for a sort of a guess, but I'm just saying, could we at least analyse or have the applicant provide information as best they can of the communities where they exist and over a period of time, particularly over 6 to 10, what has been the effect on the immediate surrounding community? I mean, has it all sort of just become a wasteland, or is it so many people got so close because it's such a great place to be?
Right.
It's
What we've seen in the past now, when we've done the fiscal impact analysis, we're in a different situation here because the proponent is preparing the fiscal impact analysis, and we are providing a peer review of it. And Applied Economic Research is our fiscal impact person. When he did the fiscal impact analysis for some similar centers, lifestyle-type centers, he actually did a case study approach, went to the communities where similar shopping centers were done and interviewed municipal officials. And we would expect that would be part of this fiscal impact.
Yeah,
Now,
that's exactly what
some people try to do a fiscal impact analysis where they use average multipliers or pull things out of textbooks. But it's really important to actually talk to the people.
The real
who've been
people
through this.
who've already seen the development.
Right. Right.
Yeah, so that should be in,
Yeah.
that should be in here, yeah.
And actually, that should be done independently as to avoid, again, cherry picking. Because certainly in many places when there's been a development and the town personnel involved in it, you're going to have it rather tough for them to say, oh, was I dumb in letting this pass through?
Well, it's a good point. I mean, we are not doing the analysis ourselves. So one of the things we might do in the scoping session is to actually talk, identify some sites we want to have more information on. If we,
Yeah, yes, that's what write them right in here, which
And
particular
we
one.
should have a spot
Yeah.
check it too. I mean, the applicant's
Yeah.
providing the data,
Yeah.
but it doesn't stop us doing a spot check.
Sure.
It only takes a telephone call or two.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
this is a little bit off the subject, but it's dealing with municipal revenues. What is intergovernmental transfers? It's on page 27, line 23. They're talking about everything that generates property taxes, personal property, excise taxes, fees and licenses, intergovernmental transfers.
I don't know the specifics of New Hampshire municipal finance, but this is the case where if the state is collecting some types of revenues that it shares with the communities. For example, the school funding issue, that would be one of the examples. Where that's intergovernmental transfer.
Rooms and meal tax would be another
Rooms and meal tax, okay. Something that one level of government collects, but gives to another level of government to spend.
So, but there's no necessarily a definite revenue. Well, it might.
Well, what happens, for example, you don't have this problem here, but in Massachusetts, what happens is the retail stores comes in, the sales tax goes up, that changes intergovernmental transfers. So you don't have that issue
Yeah.
here, so that's removed. But
Okay.
You might have something similar.
Well, if there's a food court, we will have it in meals and taxes, in rooms and meals.
Yeah, but the local community doesn't get the
Doesn't collect
benefit.
it.
Right, the state benefits, but
But
it's
they're-
not necessarily us.
State kicks back in Massachusetts some percentage to
Right, yeah. Another example is, there was actually a very important example in one of the studies we did was the motor vehicle excise tax. Because it really depends where the motor vehicles are registered. And if you have, if in one situation, I think there was a question about whether a particular type of development was going to have all of its vehicles registered in the town, or they're going to be registered somewhere else and just driving to the town and driving out. So that's,
That's a good point.
that's an issue.
Yeah.
Now, after all that, should that be in there with New Hampshire's situation, or?
It doesn't hurt anything.
Well, we have excise taxes in here, so I
Yeah.
guess it counts, yeah. Anything else on fiscal?
Environmental, huh?
Environmental. This talks about a water budget analysis. It talks about the potential impacts on public water well recharge areas, and that was a topic of discussion at the October meeting. Identification of any hazardous waste sites, description of wetland resources, any federally or state protected, endangered, or threatened species, any landmarks or historic or archaeological resources in the area, and air quality and noise impacts. I know noise was a particular interest.
Yeah, that was a big concern.
Some more detail in the couple of the appendices, A and B.
A and B talk to this, yeah.
What is the water district? I'm sorry. What is the water district that we?
It's called the Merrimack Village District. They are the owners of the wells that are in the Natty Cook aquifer fault line, which is over the hill from this, but nevertheless may be connected. Yeah.
There was an issue about blasting.
Well, yes, that's, I'm glad you reminded me of that. This was based on some bad experience that we had trying to build the Home Depot, where we, in blasting, seemed to cause a contamination of some wells.
High nitrates.
Yeah, it was nitrates got into the wells. And as a result of that, they turned to what they call a codex type of blasting, which is a CO2-based, like an explosion, but it isn't really quite the same as a nitrate explosion, but it would fracture the rock. There should be a bunch of data on this. The state was involved in this because it was potentially affecting the drinking water in the town. It never got into the town wells, but it did get into some private wells. So the result was we changed, and I think that we would be well advised in this case to go directly to a codex type of explosion here to avoid the risk of any of that happening to any. I think the houses in the vicinity are all serviced by the Merrimack Village District, but nevertheless, there's the potential for the town well itself, the Merrimack Village District well, to be impacted, and I don't think we want to take that risk.
What would we ask for readings before we start, and then, as you're going along?
Well, the only problem with that is, if you're talking about the town well, I think you'd have to talk about some monitoring wells between you and the town, where you'd have the monitoring wells. You don't want to wait until you've affected the well right. Before you stop. So you might have monitoring wells if in between, so that you could detect and then
just go on,
and then stop and then switch to the other method. The codex method, it won't produce any contamination of the well, at least not directly from anything you putting into the ground.
Okay, I was
Because it's carbon
just trying to
dioxide.
look what is the safest way to also eliminate any type of confusion or, possibilities. So
Would be to go to the codex, in my view, yeah.
And I think you had highlighted that in our discussion in another section of the section that we're not reviewing right now.
Yes, we had put it, where did we put it?
It was on page 16 under additional permits and approvals. Actually had a reference to Massachusetts state laws. Get caught.
Just to go back to the water budget down in Appendix A and B. In Appendix B, number 4D, you refer to a plan for the long-term maintenance of stormwater collection and recharge water treatment systems. I guess I would broaden that out to include periodic maintenance and inspection and the long-term maintenance of the system itself. But what's the maintenance regimen going to be periodically, and how will it be carried out?
Say that again. What's the addition here?
Operation and maintenance plan.
Okay.
Basically, yeah, because under the, stormwater 2 regulations, that becomes more of a burden for the town if it's not addressed in the course of the use.
In some preliminary discussions with DPW and all, it's been suggested that we consider doing all the runoff from the site, recharging it on the site as a goal, if that can be done. I think the applicant is leaning in that direction. And we'd just like to encourage that. I think that's, if we talk about putting stormwater into the town, nearby town system, I think we're going to be very quickly overloading it. I don't think it was designed to handle that. Well, some of that may be state system. Gordon? Yeah.
As I understand it, the new DES site-specific regulations are
Yeah.
going to completely change the way you consider volume of runoff. I mean, right up till now, we've all been concerned about total suspended solids removal and peak discharge attenuation. Now they're factoring in both nitrates, nitrate removal, and volume attenuation. So functionally, we need to, under the new state regulations, we're going to need to maximize infiltration.
Okay.
We have good soils out there. We have not done the level of design to prove out what maximizing means functionally, but that's the direction we're in.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you. I thought that was the case, Gordon. Thank you. So, thanks for your information, Rick. There's some words in there, I think, that talk to this, but we might make it a little bit more encouraging.
But what you're saying is it doesn't necessarily mean no offsite. It just means you're going to maximize onsite.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, there's some water that leaves the site today.
Right.
And we sort of have a right to continue that flow. We don't have a right to increase the peak volume of that flow, absolutely. And then it becomes a matter of how much, if any, additional volume you can allow to leave the site. And that's kind of where as I understand it, where the regulations are.
And we'll also, of course, have to look at the quality of the water.
Quality.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the quality.
that goes
We'll
without
now
saying.
have thousands of cars
Yeah.
parked there.
Yeah.
So I think that would be under Appendix A, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's right there, lines 18, 19, 20.
Right.
It also appears on Appendix B too as well.
Yeah, A and B kind of.
A and B could almost be merged
Yeah, you
together
sort of
in
merged
some form.
together, yeah.
Because I mean, B's just got, you're almost duplicating some of it.
One's more quantity and one's quality, but we can,
Well,
yeah,
yeah.
we can address, and we can probably pull this all again, merge the appendices back into the text, because it's pretty short in the text. Especially since we're cutting out so much of the rest of the.
Yeah.
How are we doing?
Okay.
Is there anything else under the environmental piece that you would like to see more information on, or explanation or clarification?
I I guess at this point, I don't know, I don't see anything else offhand myself. I think we've covered everything that was in the outline we had originally come up with, but maybe board members have some other thoughts since. There's the issue. There's a bunch of issues surrounding the construction of this site, which we had sort of lumped into a separate paragraph. There isn't a section in here that talks about construction, and I don't know if that's properly part of the conditional use permit or more part of the development agreement.
I think you could, I think you should address that in the conditional use permit. Well, actually, some of it may actually be site plan
Or site plan,
stuff. Yeah, I think that probably that maybe the site plan, some of it is site plan, some of it is development agreement. I would say that issues that come up that maybe you can't tie to the site plan, such things as travel paths of construction vehicles and
A lot of,
that kind of
yeah,
stuff. Probably would go in the development agreement.
mainly management of runoff water during construction and the construction traffic
Yep.
and the associated construction disruptions, blasting or its equivalent,
Right.
that sort of thing.
Right.
And we have a bunch of concerns that surround that, but I'm not
Those,
sure. where
those
to
could all
address-
go in the development agreement, but we need to be
that?
identifying. They could all go in the development agreement.
Development
Yeah,
agreement would be
yeah.
the place for that,
Yeah.
okay.
But should we require in section 8.7 regarding environmental impact, similar to the way we included for traffic management during construction, environmental compliance or environmental management of the site during construction?
Can't hurt. It can't hurt to put it in there, right?
Just
But at some point, we'll want some detail around that. I don't know if, it's probably too early to ask them for details about it.
Well, it'd be threshold
Here.
levels of performance, and then the details would show up in the site plan, would
Yeah.
show up in the erosion and sedimentation control plan as part of the site plan package.
Yeah, where does the blasting get covered?
That would be under noise, probably under the environmental, under noise and, you're talking about where adheres get covered or generally?
Well, he was putting it off to the site plan, I was trying to think of how would you cover that on the site plan? But, so it's gotta go somewhere besides the site plan, right?
Oh, that could be covered in the development
Development
agreement,
agreement.
too.
Yeah.
I was proposing
Okay.
to handle stormwater during construction as set the thresholds for performance in the development
I
agreement,
think that's right.
and then the details would show up on the site plan
Okay.
as
Yeah.
part of the
Yeah.
package. And you could do the same for the blasting piece,
Yeah,
would be to set the
or general
expectation.
noise levels kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask that question on not noise levels of the outlet stores, but noise levels of construction.
That's right, that's what I was getting at.
Yeah, because we've run into, at another site, the overall noise levels, and I don't know if we've ever have anything or said anything, or, but it should be reasonable.
We need to cover them somewhere, that's all, and I guess we can cover them in the development agreement, is what you're suggesting.
I would think that would be
Yep.
possible.
Yep.
You could
Yep.
specify different decibel limits to apply to different activities during different times on site. And that would be in the development agreement and would continue to control even through the development of the project, according to the site
And
plan.
of course, more than just decibels, but you have sounds people to address these issues. The type of the noise is sometimes more important than the decibels.
Is there also air quality stuff in here? I mean, it's mentioned very briefly.
It's very
but
briefly
concern
mentioned on
about
page
dust and
14.
Diesel emissions and those kinds of things.
Yeah,
as
all of
well.
that is kind of, maybe we can spell that out a little more. The kinds of things we were concerned about were, diesels, we were concerned about buses and idling vehicles on the site. This is after development now.
Right, after
And-
development.
Yeah,
But even during development with dust management and things, was they're doing grading and things, if they don't,
yeah, but, let's see, this section here, the environmental impact is gonna be talking about the end product. And then we need to cover it during construction as well.
Okay, so.
Is this
so-
separate?
Yeah, that would be
separate
another, that would be,
rules?
I think we could, under each of these things, we could look at the short-term construction-related impacts and longer-term
Yeah.
impacts.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, Rick, what else do we've talked about environmental impact, the next is,
It's essentially, we've just basically wrapped it up. There's a couple sort of things about, describing what the site is going to be like, schematic renderings. I'm not sure whether you want to get to that point or whether you want to wait for site plan review for detail.
I think we do want to get to that point, and I would suggest that we expand that, because
Okay.
part of the ordinance was compliance overall with the architectural guidelines within the town, and that the thematic architectural schemes be set as part of the conditional use permit, and that becomes, if you will, the design handbook for subsequent site plan review.
There's also a section of the ordinance regarding signs.
Yeah, it was particularly,
Signage,
we talked
lighting.
about that 2 years
Yeah.
ago, that the signs had to conform, and we
Right.
wanted a sort of uniform signage and not have to put up with a sort of mess that you can see in other parts of the community. And I don't mean
Interesting.
Merrimack.
When I read the ordinance, I actually interpreted the ordinance almost in a contrary way, which is probably not a good thing.
No.
Because,
not when you're wearing this hat.
yeah, I guess it just said, well, I can see how you could read it both ways. It almost seemed to me as if this were giving an exemption to town sign regulations rather than being controlling.
It was.
Okay.
That was, what page are you on?
I'm,
Just-
well, I'm
just give me
looking at the regulations, item 8. I mean, the ordinance, item 8.
Item 8.
The ordinance, so.
The ordinance,
Oh, yeah.
I've got the ordinance.
He hasn't been codified, so it doesn't have page numbers on it.
Oh,
yeah.
oh, okay.
But I think it does potentially allow an exemption, but provided we have a reason to grant it, and we know what we're getting
Right.
in place of the strict application of the.
Right.
of
It
the
says,
ordinance.
basically says a sign program shall be of a nature and magnitude as may be determined by the planning board in its sole discretion to be reasonably necessary and appropriate, given the location and setting. So that seems, it doesn't seem to have guidance, I guess I would say. Did you want, yeah,
But that's why I think it's important that we put the requirement
Okay.
in the conditional use permit regulations, saying that we would like to get a hierarchy of signage.
Just submit a signage master plan.
Yes,
Exactly.
yeah,
Same thing for
Yeah.
architectural.
That's certainly what we talked about 2 years ago, that the signs would all look the same, and, we weren't going to have to put up with everybody's standard sign willy-nilly and make the place look a mess.
Right. Same for landscaping, lighting.
well, do you want to have landscaping and lighting plans at this level?
I don't think at this level,
Yeah.
no.
That's like
They're
a
part of the
review
site
issue.
plan.
Yeah.
Plans, but I think they want statements in terms of.
Okay, statement, okay.
The
Okay.
quality and the thresholds, if you will, that we expect to be met in subsequent site plan submissions.
Okay, that's,
Okay. So landscaping, lighting. Do you have dark sky requirements, or do you?
yes.
And then this section on section 8.9, which is the relationship to other jurisdictions, is basically saying that, the fact that you're granting a conditional use permit doesn't mean that somebody else, the state has to permit it, or the fact that the state has permitted it doesn't mean that you have to permit it. You're looking at this independently.
Okay. I guess we always thought we were. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it says he can duplicate data, and that's sure no problem with that, yeah. The part, section 9, I thought didn't belong in the CUP, didn't belong in the
Right.
conditional use permit. It's certainly something we want to do, but it goes in the development agreement, I think, is where Walter suggested it go. All right. You with us there, Walter? Page 15.
Yes.
The infrastructure inspections.
Yep.
And then additional's the same. Well, this is where we got into the explosion.
Right.
And I think this. Of the parking, this is an interesting thing here. The 9 feet by 18 feet,
That was just, just I bolded it because I wasn't sure what you wanted to do, so I just left it.
Okay.
I just was kind of last minute finishing
Okay.
up stuff.
Walter's pointed out to me that our zoning ordinance actually says a parking space is 9 feet by 18 and a half feet.
Huh.
in Merrimack.
Well, I wanted to give them a 6-inch bonus here.
So what, I don't think we can do that.
Not without a variance.
Okay, I think this can be deleted,
Yeah.
I think, and,
Drive more big pickups in Merrimack.
SUV.
and then 10.3, we've all said is going to move into section 8.
Yes.
So really, there's,
Perfect.
that whole section 10
Yeah.
disappears. And then you'll probably have the provision of security already in your site subdivision regulations.
Yeah.
I don't have
Yeah.
it, so that's, delete that. We'll talk about all these details.
Yeah.
I have a whole bunch of things that are marked for either deletion or moving from our previous telephone conversation.
Yeah.
I'm not sure there's anything else that we really, at this point, need to go through, is there?
The only other piece that I thought might be relevant was section 16.1
I was about to look at that.
through 16.3. Deal with
I would suggest we take a look at 16.4 as well.
another,
Yeah,
but in terms of just
Yes, we've already caught that one. Yeah.
discussing with the board the understanding for approval.
do you think that, you stopped at 16.3, if we skipped 16.4, is the rest of it also, the rest of 16, oh, let me see, 16.1, 2, and 3, I was looking at 16.1, I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry,
Yeah.
just the larger. The others, I think, overlap with regulations that are already in place, and so we don't need to go there tonight.
Well, 16, are you leaving in 16.1 or are you taking it out? What?
Leaving in 16.1, but not 16.14, right? Is that what you're saying?
Okay, so, all right, I'm with you there.
What I was suggesting is discussing 16.1,
Yes.
approval of the plan, and all of its subsections. 16.2,
Yep.
conditions of approval, and 16.3, development agreement.
Great.
But we're taking out 16.14.
No. 16.1.4 says the extent to which the project will serve identified housing needs of the town.
Yeah.
0. It's a short section.
It'll be 0. I mean,
That's,
Gonna put up barracks for employees, John?
Hey, come on, that's going back to the,
hammocks.
I don't really think
Stacked
you
on
can
set.
combine them.
the comment was made about the 16.4 requiring 6 concurring.
I understand that, But 16.14 was also, but 16.4 should go, and I think we all agree with that.
If we're taking that out, my view of this thing becomes very different.
And some of this other stuff, we've got to be sure that we're not stepping on our own RSAs or our own
Yes.
other regulations. When you get into 16.5s and all the way and beyond. Are you leaving all of that, taking all of that out?
Taking it all out,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, okay,
All that needs to be
Okay.
reviewed for consistency, but
okay.
I didn't know whether the board wanted to discuss any of the language.
What are you deleting?
Deleting 16.5, 16.6, 16.7, 16.8.
Okay.
But what you're asking for is to
16.9.
go back to 16.1, correct?
16.1, 2,
Yeah.
and 3,
So we-
and just see if there are any comments.
Those are the only three that we're leaving in.
Right.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
are there comments
Yeah.
on these as criteria for approval? Considerations for approval? Probably, I'm looking at 16.1.3 and thinking that maybe
Yeah.
reduction in automotive use
Yeah.
is probably not going to happen.
How's that gonna work? Yeah,
It's a nice overall goal, but probably
Yeah.
doesn't work in this type of development.
yeah.
Well,
Well-
big multi-wide bicycle paths we're going to put in there, right? Oh,
Well,
Well, you could be, I mean, if you're trying to determine that the design is such that people don't feel the need to keep moving their cars around the car park, you know, to get to the other side of the thing. I mean, I don't know if that's what you meant. That's what I took it to mean. The people.
No, I think it's a more generic, it's a more generic statement.
Oh,
yeah.
sorry, I misunderstood it.
Yeah. That would fall into pedestrian-oriented design, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
the fact that you design it, that people put their cars there and leave them there, they don't keep moving them from this side to that side,
Right.
like it's been people do things. Some of the other malls.
well, some of these are nice to have. I don't know how much the project will actually do them, but be able to accomplish them.
I guess my reason for raising the question is that these are listed as the reasons for which the board would approve the plan from the information that's been submitted. And do these,
It's in addition to factors specified in the zoning ordinance, the way it's written. So you have a number of issues that are specified in the zoning ordinance, including the positive fiscal benefit and so forth. And, so this would be like additional things you should consider as you're looking at it.
Here's this one. The camera.
Chairman, are we going to leave 1614 in?
16.14 or 16.1.4?
No, 16.14.
That's not in at the moment. Everything after
I
16.
know that's what you said. I'm asking the question, should we not leave 1614 in?
Oh, okay, well, the rest of us are still struggling with 16.1, but let's see,
sorry.
let's see what
I
it
sort of
says.
took that as,
Okay,
I moved on.
okay. That might be worth leaving in, yeah.
sixteen, 14.
16.14, yeah.
I wasn't proposing that any of the rest of it be eliminated this evening, just that it be reviewed separately and brought back as appropriate.
Oh, sorry, I took the chairman to say it had all been eliminated, so I was going through to seeing what's
Okay.
been eliminated. Hence I
I
was
thought
saying,
he
you ought to come back again.
I thought what you guys said to eliminate it.
I was happy losing most of it.
Well, we still may.
Because it repeats, the reason for eliminating is that it repeats and potentially conflicts with present regulations.
regulations.
That's what I want to
That's
confirm.
that's what you wanted. And there's no need in repeating present regulations in here. You don't want the same regulation in two places. It's
I haven't read it
dangerous.
all in that much detail
Yeah,
to
yeah.
be able to confirm
Yeah,
it right now.
Especially if you change one and forget to change the
yeah.
other. Where would you like this, is this going to be codified in the Green Book? Is that where that's going to end up?
I think so.
So should we, for the next draft, should I be thinking about adding it as the next number after the end of the table of contents here?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
probably
Be-
make the most.
Another standalone section of its own.
It'd be section 13 then.
Yeah.
It'd be-
Ooh, bad number.
You skipped to 14. 13
beyond.
left blank.
The elevator doesn't stop.
This page intentionally left.
Well, they do that with house numbering, so.
Yeah.
Good on hotels, too.
This is the
set it up
subdivision regulations. So. Yeah, 13.
I would have called it the subdivision regulations, but I heard everybody here called it the Green Book, so.
Yeah, well, it's because it's not only subdivision, it's also site
Site
plan.
review, yeah.
Yeah, site plan and subdivision. So, Rick, what else can we do for you?
I think we've done quite enough.
Second,
One thing to make sure it is quite clear, and that is about the phasing. That phase one must meet all the requirements. It, standing by itself, has to meet the requirements of fiscal benefits and so on, because phase two may never be built.
yeah, that's a good thing to point out.
Right. You have that, yeah.
Anything else that we've omitted? Steve?
Under section 17, evidence of satisfactory performance, talking about as-built drawing delivery. Line 40 indicates GIS for a site plan. I'd probably suggest that we also get the architecturals, which is typically DWG or CAD type style drawing in, because CAD and GIS is different. So in that essence, all they have to do is put out an Esri type system or GIS and not give architectural electronics. I would suggest architectural electronics. Well, I should say AEC, Architectural Engineering Construction Electronics.
This is for the architectural. Would you, yeah, even if this is not the final architecture, remember, this is for conditional use permit, so this is going to be
Right, but they are talking about
conceptual.
This actually
They're talking about
should,
as-built.
this actually should be in the site regulation.